It is appetizer night in our house, and guys, you would think that when I tell my kids that we're having appetizers for dinner, that I am taking them to their all-time favorite restaurant. This is such a big family favorite. So I'm gonna give you several different appetizers that you can make. Your guests are gonna love them, your family's gonna love them, or maybe you just wanna do it like we do and have appetizer night for your family. I've got my simmer pot over here working. It smells amazing in my house. If you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure you follow me over on Instagram at Feeding the Birds. And I actually have a reel where I show you how I made our simmer pot, and it just cooks in the crock pot and it smells so delicious. Like my entire house smells amazing. I am prepping this early because appetizer night, because I'm making so many different things, can get a little hectic in the kitchen. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep as much as possible now. The first thing we need to do is make up a chimichurri sauce, and that is because we are going to make chimichurri meatballs. How good does that sound? I love chimichurri. It is absolutely one of my favorite sauces. And I'm actually gonna be making enough meatballs that we're gonna use them in a different recipe as well. So the half of these are gonna be used for this video and half are gonna be used in a different video, because then I have another meatballs recipe that sounds incredible. I have one shallot. I'm gonna cut off the ends and then get the outerness off, the outer layer. And I usually prefer to take off whatever layers taste like paper. Same with an onion, but you guys know we don't use onion a whole lot here. It's pretty rare. My husband, for some reason, doesn't mind shallot though. So whenever I have an opportunity, I will use shallot. We're gonna cut this into wedges. And you can use your food processor if that's what you want to use to make this. Actually, let me cut this a little smaller. I have my blender cup. We're gonna be using that. Also, this is the perfect night to make this because my parsley is on its last leg here and we need 3/4 of a cup. So we're gonna use quite a bit of this parsley, and I'm not really concerned about breaking it up or anything. I'm going to just snip off the good pieces and go directly into this cup, and I'm gonna get significant amounts of it on the floor while we do that. Okay, I don't know if this is quite 3/4 of a cup, but I think I've cut off the majority of the good looking, saving just a bit in case I need some for another recipe. Now you can throw in some fresh garlic if you want. Just throw in the whole, not the whole bulb, but you know what I mean. Like when you take the clove out, you can throw that in there. We actually don't have any right now. So I'm gonna take what would be about 2 minced garlic cloves and put that in. And unfortunately, I'm out of fresh oregano right now. That's another thing that I feel like I could add to my garden that we would probably use a lot. So we're going to use some dried oregano. I'm gonna, maybe a teaspoon or so. We need about 1.5 teaspoons of salt in here. And then I'm also gonna add some pepper. This is white pepper, but you can use whatever you prefer, about 1/2 teaspoon or so. I mean, if you like it really peppery, then use more. About 3/4 of a cup of oil. This is avocado oil, but feel free to use an olive oil if that's what you're comfortable with, what you normally have on hand. And this is not a new recipe to me, so if you need to measure, please feel free to do that. Because we make this kind of stuff quite a bit, I know exactly the amounts that we need just from looking at how it is in the blender cup. The most underrated kitchen, what would you call this? Addition? I'm not even sure. I love red wine vinegar. It adds the best flavor to things. We're gonna add about 1/4 cup. And about 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Now you can go less on this if you don't want the added spice. It's so good though, trust me, it's so good. Now the key here is pulsing, a pulse. It's not a constant blend. You want to pulse this and just pull it together. Okay, now if you want this to look less, combined, so it looks more olive oil-ish. I don't know the best words to use here. You can actually pulse together the shallot, the garlic, the parsley, the oregano, all of that, then put that into a bowl and mix it with your oil. You can do it whatever way you want. That's gonna look more like a traditional chimichurri. I usually just keep it really easy and mix everything in here because then I can just store it in this in the refrigerator, especially if I'm making it a day ahead. It's totally up to you, but you're gonna get a more traditional looking chimichurri if you pulse it separately, then add in your oil and your vinegar. In this bowl here, I have 1 pound of sweet Italian sausage and 1 pound of ground beef. You can use ground beef and lamb, you can use ground beef and pork, ground beef and Italian sausage, ground beef and whatever kind of sausage you prefer. Do just ground beef, you could do turkey, chicken. I mean, the possibilities are endless. This is just what I am using. And like I said, we're gonna be cutting this recipe in half. Now you can use whatever kind of breadcrumbs for this recipe that you prefer, but I've actually been really loving panko breadcrumbs lately. So that's what we're gonna use. Just a really finely ground Italian breadcrumb is completely fine. So we need about 3/4 of a cup for this. I'm gonna add about a 1/3 cup of this chimichurri into the panko, and we're gonna mix that together. Ooh, you can smell that shallot and the garlic. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna mix together that pork and the beef. The easiest way to do this is with your hands, y'all. I mean, I could put it in the KitchenAid mixer and do it that way too, but you're gonna get a decent mix with your hands for sure. I choked on a cup of coffee before starting this video. So between that and the shallots making my eyes water, this is going really well. I'm gonna add in, oh, I almost added 2, but we're cutting this in half. We only need 1 egg. Oh, and you know what? Now that I think about it, I may have mixed too much panko. We'll see. We'll see how this works. I think it'll be all right because of the type of panko that it is. Okay, we need to mix all of this together, and we might actually need to toss some over the side of the bowl. We might actually need to add a little bit of salt. I have this 1.5 tablespoon scoop that I absolutely love for meatballs. It makes the perfect size meatballs for what we need. I usually will just take a scoop and just kind of like lightly roll it, because this rolls one side of it, obviously. Lay them on a parchment lined baking sheet. This works so perfect. And this guarantees that they're pretty much all the same size, so you're gonna get the same cook time on each one. I also want to mention that whenever I make meatballs, something I do a lot is go ahead and double the recipe, because for us, meatballs, they're one of those things that you can cook up a bunch of them and then put them in a freezer safe container, and it can be reheated so easily. So on a night when maybe you don't know what you want to have for dinner, you can throw together a spaghetti and meatball so fast. My kids can actually pull those out of the freezer and easily make up a lunch for themselves. All they have to do is reheat the meatballs that have already been cooked. It's one of those things where I highly suggest, if you're gonna make up a meatball mixture anyway, why not go ahead and just double it so that you have it for later on. Our oven will get preheated to 350 degrees. These will bake for 15 minutes. Then you turn on the broil function, and then you broil them for about 5 more minutes, and it's gonna add that crispiness to the top. So good. Let's taste these meatballs, that chimichurri inside of them. I gotta have some more. Those are so packed full of flavor. Wow. Wow. I've never thought to mix chimichurri into a meatball, but that is delicious. You are getting flavor with every single bite. It tastes like you spent all day making them. That is so good. You guys need to make this one for sure. This next recipe I actually made while we were on a cruise ship when my husband and I took a cooking class together. It was a tailgating party cooking class on Carnival. I asked if I could share this with you, and they said that I could. We are making soft pretzel bites. As I'm making this, I'll actually show you clips of when we made it on the cruise ship as well. We had a great time doing that, by the way. Super fun, totally worth it to take that cooking class together. Into this little bowl here, we're gonna add about 3/4 of a cup of milk, and we are going to spill it over the side. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna spill it, and then we're gonna warm it up so that we have warm milk. Now that my milk is warm, add 1 teaspoon of yeast, into the milk, and 1 tablespoon of honey. Now I am gonna mix that together. This is really just gonna sit to the side for about 10 minutes before we do anything else. So while this activates, basically, I'm going to wash up some dishes and get some stuff ready for the next portion of this recipe. While the yeast was activating for about the past 10 minutes, I went ahead and washed up all the dishes, got water all over the front of my shirt. It was great. We're gonna add 2 cups of flour here into my mixing bowl. And you can mix this in a mixer or like with a dough hook, or you can mix this by hand. In the class that we took, we mixed it by hand. So that is completely fine, totally okay to do that. Add about a ½ teaspoon of salt. And then I'm gonna add in that yeast, milk, and honey mixture all into this bowl. Now I'm gonna mix this in the mixer for about 5 minutes or so with that dough hook and just really let it pull together. The dough will mix long enough that it really doesn't stick that much anymore. So you just let it kind of work on its own. I won't set it to a very high speed. It'll be a lower speed just because you want it to mimic your hands. The dough has been mixing. I'm sprinkling my counter with some flour because we're going to roll it out right here. The dough is not sticking to the hook at all. Now you actually want to shape it into somewhat of a ball here and then flatten it out a bit. I'm gonna cut this into 4s. This will be a lot easier with my metal cutter, pastry cutter, but that one has disappeared. No idea where that went. All right, so 4 equal pieces, equal-ish. We're going to roll this into a snake, okay? Now, obviously, if you are very adventurous, you can make the actual pretzel shapes. We are totally fine with just doing pretzel bites because those are easier. Make them as long as you want. Then you're gonna just cut them into pieces, bite-sized pieces, and we're going to like moderately shape them. Not a whole lot. I mean, just into bites, you know, so they're not completely square. You don't have to do this, but that's what we did in the class. So that's what I'm doing here. These are all different sizes. I did not do well with that cutting at all. Let's do better with the next one. We've made all of the little pretzels. I've got the pot over here with boiling water in it. We're about to add some baking soda. I've already got my parchment lined baking sheet here so that we can add everything to the baking sheets. This is pretty much moving over to the stovetop at this point. We need to add in 1/4 cup of baking soda into this water. Just add it slow so you don't boil over. About 8 pieces or so at a time, we're gonna add them into that boiling water. And these really just cook in there for about 30 seconds. So you really pay attention, and then you're gonna pull them out and put them directly onto that baking sheet that you have. These have been through the boil and they've also cooled. I have 1 whisked egg here, and we're just going to give each of these an egg wash. So mostly focusing just on the top area, going all around. And now we want to sprinkle with some coarse salt. Now, if you don't have coarse salt, don't let that keep you from making these because you can just use regular salt. We just happen to have it, which is perfect. Now, these are gonna go in my 425-degree preheated oven for 8 to 10 minutes. We'll check them at 8, but probably up to 10 minutes for that golden brown color. While the pretzels are in the oven, I'm gonna make up a really quick cheese sauce to go with them. So we've got 1 tablespoon of butter. My heat is on a medium. Okay, as this melts, I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of flour. And we're gonna whisk that together, creating a roux. And then adding to this and really mixing it well, we're gonna do 1 cup of milk. I'm adding a pinch of salt. And then shredded cheese is probably best, but we're gonna add about 1 cup of cheddar cheese and let this all melt together. And then it's gonna make a perfect cheese sauce. You guys, these pretzels are so good. So good. I don't know how these are gonna make it to the table. We are making a warm fig and goat cheese and prosciutto dip. Let me just tell you, I actually started the process of recording this a couple of weeks ago. I pre-made the dip. I didn't add everything to the top of it, put it in the refrigerator with the intent on finishing up the filming that evening, and we were gonna have this at dinner. I ended up getting really sick that day, and so we didn't film it, we didn't finish it, we didn't even heat it, but we did eat it. We ate it as a cold dip, and it was delicious like that. So tonight we actually are gonna eat it as a hot dip, but I wanna let you know, even if you don't bake this and you don't serve it warm, it's also delicious as a cold dip. Again, making a half recipe because we just don't need it with everything else that we're having with dinner tonight. I'm gonna cut up 3 pieces. Actually, I might just tear them up. We've got some prosciutto. 3 pieces of prosciutto. Let me finish my sentence. I'm going to add 3 pieces of prosciutto to this bowl. If you just want to tear it, that is completely fine. Now, if you don't like prosciutto, I think you could use bacon or, I mean, you could use ham. That's what prosciutto is, but it's very, very good. You could probably actually leave the prosciutto out and make this a vegetarian dip. It adds a saltiness to the dip, but it doesn't, I think it would actually still be really good even without it. I've got 4 ounces of goat cheese that we're gonna add into this. I've let this come to room temperature because it makes it significantly easier to stir together. It's gonna be really easy to stir together if I can get it opened. I've been asked before, what if I don't like goat cheese? I mean, just think soft cheeses. So when you go into the grocery store and you're trying to find a substitute, I mean, this one's also gonna go with cream cheese. You probably could make it just cream cheese, but just look around at the soft cheeses and that's gonna help you kind of decide what you could use instead of goat cheese. We are going to add in between 2 and 4 ounces of cream cheese. Last time I did add 4 ounces, so I made the goat cheese and the cream cheese the same amount, 4 and 4. But you can go more or less, it's completely up to you. If you want a really prominent goat cheese flavor, then add more goat cheese than you do cream cheese. It's actually alarming how easy this recipe is. Like, it's gonna look like you spent hours making this, but it's really, really easy. So combined together, you can use a hand mixer, you can use a KitchenAid mixer. My cheeses have come to room temperature, so they're pretty easy to mix together. So I'm just gonna mix them rather than dirtying another thing. Also, it's so weird. Every time I've made this recipe or any dip recently, I order the Crunchmaster crackers, okay? So they're the olive oil Crunchmaster, I think that's the brand. I don't know exactly what the brand is, but that's what it's called. They're like a seedy cracker, kind of thin, really crispy cracker. Every single solitary time, the grocery store is out of it. Is this company gone under? What has happened here? So I keep having to get different crackers, but I think it would be so good with those. And all of it is gonna go into my little dish. Obviously you can make a much bigger version, but we're just doing, what size is this? 7 by 5, 7 by 5 dish. Okay, now we just spread this out. All right, I do like to wipe the sides of a container like this if it's going in the oven, because I've said this before, but if it gets burnt on the sides, you know, it doesn't look quite as pretty. So I'll just wipe it down a little bit just near the edges. It's absolutely an aesthetics thing and not a requirement by any means. Okay, now we have some fig jam, or this is fig preserves. We're gonna spread this on the top. I do like to mix it a bit in the jar before taking it out. It just makes it spread a little easier. And you need about a half cup, so a little bit more than that. So we're just gonna spread all the way to the edges. Make sure we cover the whole thing. I'm telling you, you could eat it just like this without doing anything else. It's so good. We've had it like this. I can vouch for the fact that it is delicious just as a cold dip as well. Very, very good. But we are gonna heat it this time. And then I'll let you know whether I think that it was better as a cold dip or better as a warm dip. While this is in the oven, we'll prepare what goes on the top. We are gonna add crushed pistachios to the top of this. So good. This is gonna go in a 400-degree oven, and it only has to bake for about 8 to 10 minutes. I mean, Could this be any easier of a dip? You're just putting everything together. If you mixed this with a hand mixer or in your KitchenAid mixer, it would have taken maybe 3 minutes to put this together. But it seriously looks like something that you spend so long on. Now, like I said, I prepped mine ahead, so this is just gonna go in the refrigerator until I'm ready to put this in the oven. I actually had my son work on taking some pistachios out of their shell, and then we just crushed them up because this dip is officially warm, and we are gonna add pistachios onto the top of it. And y'all, this is where it's at right here. We're huge pistachio fans in our house. Whenever we have them available, they don't last long. That's hot. I actually can't decide whether I like it better heated or cold. Both are really good. You can absolutely go either way with this one. It's sweet and savory at the same time. I could make this one over and over again, and we will love it every time.
Our verse for today comes from 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned to my YouTube channel because there are more appetizers coming this month and even next month. You're not going to want to miss all these amazing recipes that we have coming up. Have a great week.